She started as a psych major, discovered speech therapy in an ASD course, and is now co-building an AI-powered app, all while running a private practice. Today's guest is redefining what it means to be an SLP in 2025. Argie, I'm so happy to have you on today. Thank you for joining us. This is an amazing opportunity for me and for everyone listening to hear a little bit about your story and learn more about feeding. So thank you so much for joining us.
James, I am excited to be here and very honored. I love what you and Mackenzie are doing. You know, anything that inspires other SLPs, shows creativity, is going to inspire other people. And I look up to anybody who is kind of just doing their own thing and taking their own path and following their passion. So I'm excited to see where this is going to take you guys, and I'm really excited to be a part of it.
Thank you. And that's kind of the thesis of the podcast, is talking about, unwritten paths, and it's hopefully going to inspire people to do that. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that sentiment. But
Absolutely.
before we start, Argie, a little bit about yourself. Where are you located? Where did you go to school? How did you become an SLP?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I am from Astoria, Queens. Was originally born in Pennsylvania, actually, and my family moved here when I was about 2 or 3 years old. I got my undergraduate degree in psychology and communication sciences and disorders at Queens College, and then my master's degree in communication sciences and disorders at the College of St. Rose, which is in Albany. Now, when I started at Queens, I originally wanted to go into psych, and I took a course in ASD. Um, and from there, in that course, I heard about speech pathology, and my mom had also brought it to my attention as a career path. And after taking the course, I was like, you know what? I'm going to shift gears. I'm also going to do this. So one thing led to the next. I signed up for the Communication Sciences and Disorders program at Queens College. I got in, and I actually didn't fall in love with it until my advisor told me that I wasn't going to make it into graduate school because my GPA wasn't as high as it needed to be. Within the program, it was pretty high, but before getting into that program, I had a pretty low GPA. I was going through, not to get too deep into this, but I was going through a few health issues. So I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. I had hypothyroidism, and I didn't realize hormone-wise what was going on. So it was very difficult for me to focus on school.
Right.
But luckily, I was able to find a doctor. I was put on medication, and then as that stabilized, I was also able to put my best foot forward. So after my advisor told me that I wasn't going to get into graduate school, I turned it up a notch, many notches. I started volunteering. I retook a few courses, and I somehow got into graduate school. I don't know how that happened, but I did it. And then graduate school, was a bit difficult for me going into the clinic, working with clients one-to-one. I was very overwhelmed by having, to complete everything. Again, I was told that I wasn't being the best clinician and that I might not make it throughout the program. So anytime that somebody tells me that I can't do something, that's when I turn it up a notch. And that pressure is kind of what I thrive off of. So I end up graduating. And then after that, my CF year was in a school. I work with children with disabilities and from grades 1 to 5. And I loved it, building a relationship with the students, working with the teachers. But of course, it was a lot of paperwork. It was a lot of back-to-back. I decided to leave the school, and then I started working for an early intervention center in the Bronx. And every child that came to this clinic had a diagnosis of autism. And I really loved that population. This is why I started speech therapy, because of that one class in my undergrad. And as much as I loved it, again, back-to-back sessions, never-ending paperwork, and it's just so difficult for me to go 5 days a week to this one location from 9 to 5. I've learned over the years that life kind of works in cycles, and I wasn't able to work in this cyclical way, working a 9 to 5. But while I was there, I came across a lot of children who were picky eaters, who had very selective diets. If you saw what they were eating for lunch, it was Cheez-Its, Lunchables, pouches, yogurts, no really wholesome foods. And I couldn't help but think, like, this has to be affecting their ability to develop the skills for speech and language, not only the foods that we eat and how that builds the muscles that we use to speak, but also the nutrition that we need for things like attention, for sensory regulation. And I love getting to the root cause of things. And so I said, okay, how can we expand these children's diets? I had no idea what to do. And I remember when I had this thought, the following day, one of the workers at the intervention center gave me this binder filled with feeding therapy techniques. It was a textbook by Evans Morris and Marsha Duncline. I mix up their names. Susan Evans Morris and Marsha Duncline. And I saw it as a sign. I was like, oh my goodness, you have to get into feeding therapy. But I didn't know what to do. So I started taking courses. And that's where my true passion within the SLP world was found. As much as I love the speech and language part of the job, I really loved feeding, especially because I have my own history of feeding issues, which is like a whole other thing. But when parents would come to me like, how do I get my child to expand their diet? How can I help them? They're a picky eater. I had no idea what to do. And one thing led to the next. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start a private practice in this. I'm going to specialize in feeding therapy. And I went from a student, an average student who didn't read a lot, who was not very studious, to now reading every day, learning every day, because I found my passion.
Wow.
I hope that answers.
Wow. Super inspiring. I loved hearing that story. That's amazing. I think it speaks to a lot, but it speaks to once you do find your passion, you can accomplish anything, you know? And there was a lot in that story that you didn't know what route you wanted to go down until it was something so unassuming as, you know, a lunch, a random day, a lunch, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then finding your passion in that lunch period, which typically we don't expect to be a big part of our day, is so cool to me. So very, very interesting. And it seems like you connect personally with this mission, which is also another thing that I think dictates someone to really be successful. So it's really cool that you have that element too. I really appreciate learning about that story.
Absolutely.
Maybe we can just unpack a little bit about what steps did you take to become a business owner? What does that first step look like? Is it as small as an email? Is it as big as, you know, diving into all the ins and outs of finances? Like, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm. Oof, I didn't know anything about business. All I knew is that I had this idea and I wanted to pursue it. I had been working from a young girl, which I think ties into why I wanted to start my own business. But my father owns a bagel store in Freeport, New York, and I started working with him from the age of 12 years old. And so growing up by my father's side, waking up at 3 a.m. so we can go make those early morning bagels, every weekend I was there with my father. And so I knew that, you know, this is going to take a lot of work. And I also have the work ethic. And when you tie that in with your passion, I mean, you can really do anything.
Yes.
As far as the first steps, it was just having fun toying with the idea of it. Like, I didn't even have to take any action, right? Like, just thinking about a name for my practice. So I remember during my lunch breaks, I would sit outside and I would just think about what I want to call my practice. And I first started with the name Stoma Therapeutic. So stoma means mouth in Greek. And I actually got my LLC with that name. I had to change it later on because if you look up what a stoma is, it's a hole in the body. So like when a child gets a G-tube in the stomach, that hole is called a stoma. So I wasn't specializing in children with feeding tubes, but anyways, my first step is you register your LLC name. So I actually got my LLC through the state of Delaware instead of through the state of New York, because then there's a few other things that you can kind of bypass, things that you would have to get done in New York, which I can't think of off of the top of my head. So I was thinking of a name. It's registering your name through an LLC, getting your tax ID number. And then from there, the next step was opening up a account for my LLC. And that's going to be really important for anybody who wants to start a business, because then you can use that for your tax write-offs. And there are so many tax benefits when you have your LLC. And I'm still learning about this process, but that was the next step, because once you start, signing up for things like your bank account, you're going to need your tax ID. And then also when you're doing things like registering for a website and all these things, you're going to need some of this information. So that's how it started. I started building up my website on Squarespace. That took many, many months. I definitely overthought it. Is that a word, overthought?
Absolutely.
Yeah, right? Okay. Overthink, overthought, overthunk. I'm just joking. So I spent so much time on the website. And of course, the website is important, but I think I spent way too much time because I wanted it to be perfect. And I think that's something that we're all going to do when we're first starting something, is we want it to be perfect. And there's a saying that my friend tells me that perfect is the enemy of good enough. Something like this. Like, what you're doing doesn't have to be perfect, because that's going to just set you back from taking action.
Yes.
And I've learned over the course of this journey that motivation and next steps come when you take action, because then you start to build momentum. And once you do one thing, then that leads to the next. So instead of thinking like all of the things that have to get done, you just kind of do one thing at a time. After I built my website, I made sure to register my business with Google, so that way I can start getting client reviews. And I reached out to a few of my past, previous clients for them to just leave a review. Those help big time. And then I didn't market myself, but because feeding therapy is so needed, people started reaching out to me. And I remember having my first consultation, and I was so overwhelmed. And I had my consultations for free for about 3 to 4 years. I had them free for a very long time. I didn't feel confident enough to start charging because I was still learning. And even though I was taking workshops, I was doing research, your confidence is not going to build until you actually start getting clients and you see them building success and that what you're doing is working. I actually just started charging for consultations about a year ago. And I'm very happy that I did, because, it's my time and I know that what I have to say is of value. And so that is going to come with confidence and trust in your services. Any questions before I continue? Because there's a few other things that I can talk about for how I've been building it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my next question would be, so like, why do people come to you? Like, what are they struggling with?
So I work with children from birth up until 10 years of age, and really depends on what stage of development the child is in. So in the first couple months, usually before 5 months, where parents come to me with bottle feeding issues. I don't target breastfeeding because I believe that belongs to the IBCLC. They really have the knowledge and tools to support parents who need breastfeeding support. I do have my CLC, and the reason why I got my CLC is so I can understand the beginning stages, the foundations of feeding, and understand if the root causes or where did feeding become challenging for the child. Because oftentimes if you see a child that's older, you can kind of tie that back all the way from the beginning when they attempted to breastfeed. So I have babies with bottle feeding aversions, and this often happens. It could be because of underlying medical difficulties that are unknown. Maybe they have some GI issues and they're starting to associate the bottle with pain and discomfort, and now they're starting to become averse to bottle feeding. Or it could be that the parent is not able to pick up on the baby's cues and they are pressure feeding, and now feeding becomes this negative experience for the baby, and now they're starting to develop an aversion to the bottle. As we transition now to solids, I'll have parents come to me, my baby doesn't want to eat, I'm putting food in front of them, but they show no interest. And so then I educate the parents on how to support their child with that. Or we're looking to see, again, is there anything underlying, any medical factors that could be playing a part? As the child is getting older, we often see children who are either reliant on purees or they're still bottle feeding. And again, they're not expanding their food preferences. So I I stress parent education so much. A lot of my feeding therapy, I don't even see the child because it's the parent that I need to target in order for the child to make progress. Because if I see a child 2 times a week for 45 minutes, but I'm not taking the time to educate the parent, it doesn't, yes, what I'm doing can be helpful, but if the parent does not feel confident in feeding their child, the person that they're going to spend with time with every single day, we're not going to make the progress that we need. And then I have the older children who, for the most part, it's just picky eating. They have very limited food preferences, and parents feel stuck and frustrated, and the relationship between them and their child has been impacted because mealtimes have become such a negative experience. Parents don't know how to support their child. They go from one end to the other. So I don't know if you heard of the main parenting styles.
Yeah, it'd be great even for me to go over them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like you-
so
so
the 3 main ones that I talk about, there's a 4th one, which is the negligent parent, but I just focus on 3. You have the authoritative parent, and this is the parent who, when they don't know what to do, they pressure the child, or they use rewards or punishment for eating or not eating certain food. So for example, you can't get up from the table until you finish your broccoli. If you eat your broccoli, then you can have ice cream. These are more pressure tactics. And what happens is the child starts to develop this negative association around mealtime and food because they are losing the sense of control. They do not have independence, and they aren't allowed to explore foods at their own pace. It's almost like, just to be extreme here, if you're going to go skydiving, I mean, that's not really a good one because you just have to jump. But it's like when you have to do something scary, what's going to support you? Somebody who's going to kind of walk you through it, guide you, maybe model how to do it, or somebody's like, you have to do it. Go do it now, right now. You know, so when you apply this to food, it only makes the picky eating worse. So that's the authoritative parenting style. Then on the other side, you have more of the permissive parenting style where the parents, when it comes to feeding, they kind of let the child eat whatever they want. They're always giving the child choices. What do you want to eat? Usually when that happens, the child will always pick their safe foods, and they're not going to feel confident to try something new because they need to be exposed and they need to be guided on how to eat different types of foods. So with that permissive parenting style, the child is stuck with these very few foods. They're not exposed to other foods because the parent doesn't want to pressure them in any way. And then they get stuck, and then what happens? They end up in a food jag. Have you ever heard what a food jag is?
No.
So a food jag is when you eat specific foods over and over and over again because they're your safe and your loved foods, but eventually you just lose the desire to want to eat these foods. It has to do with dopamine. So when you first eat a food, dopamine is going to spike, you really enjoy it, but over time that dopamine spike starts to reduce, and then the body is now going to seek something new, something different to eat. But if the child does not have any exposure to other foods, if they're more cautious, then they get stuck and frustrated and they don't know how to expand their diets. That balanced approach is right in the middle. It's the authoritarian style where you create structure and boundaries, and it has to do a lot with the division of responsibility, which has been coined by a woman named Ellen Satter, and that outlines the roles of children within the feeding environment. So the parent decides what is going to be given, when and where, and the child decides if they're going to eat, how much they're going to eat, and if they're going to even eat at all. So you create structure, but you're also exposing them to other foods, and you're creating a supportive, rich environment around food, a food culture in essence. And I feel like a lot of families have lost that food culture because of busy, lifestyles. Some parents don't know how to cook or they don't enjoy cooking. We're reliant on things like pouches and easy to eat foods and processed foods and things like that. And then the child kind of gets stuck in this cycle. So I don't know. What did this stem from? What was the main question? I'm sorry.
No, I think you're hitting the nail on the head right now. I was asking about why people come to you, but
Okay.
then you were telling us about the 3 different parenting styles.
Yeah. So this is what I frequently see. And so it's 0 to 10. And as you can see, there's a lot of different situations and cases that a feeding therapist would come across because the child is just changing so much over these 10 years.
Yeah.
So that's basically what they come to me for. And I really love it. I enjoy it.
it seems like there's a lot that they can come to you with. It seems like
Mm-hmm.
it's not so black and white too. It seems like
Yeah,
it's not just the kid, it's the whole family approach, which I think any good clinician, no matter what exact field you work in as an SLP, we have to take in the whole approach. So I think that's really cool that you're doing that, and it's super super important in your field specifically, because like you
absolutely.
said, the parents are with them 100% of the time. We're with them maybe 10% of the time if we're lucky. So
Yeah.
that needs to be carried over. All those good practices need to be carried over.
Absolutely. And yes, as you said, that goes with anything, whatever kind of therapy that you're doing, you have to be involved with the parents. So even though somebody might be considered a pediatric SLP and you say, "Oh, I work with children all day." You are still working with adults. You have to make it a point to also know and learn how to communicate with parents and adapt your teaching style to meet the parents' needs, right? For some parents, they
Yes.
might be a little bit more anxious. Some parents are a little bit more open and understanding. So you have to be very flexible in that sense. And that's, a therapeutic approach in learning how to communicate with different personalities.
100%. 100%. I agree with that sentiment. You mentioned a little bit about how you just started charging for consultations.
Mm-hmm.
What does a typical rate look like for you if you're able to
Oh,
dive
yes.
into that
Absolutely.
piece?
So, if there's one thing I hate, and I've experienced this myself, it's jumping into something and paying a large amount of money that I don't feel confident in. Because as soon as I make that payment, I'm like, oh my gosh, did I make the right choice? So, whichever parent comes to me, I want to make sure that they feel good about that decision that they're going to make. So, my consultations, they used to be free. Now they're $50. It's very low. It's 30 minutes. I have parents complete an intake form. It's going to give me some basic background information. And then during that one-to-one, I ask them some follow-up questions, and then I tell them about my services and how I can support them. So the next step would be I have something called Feeding Foundations, and I have a basic plan and I have a comprehensive plan. The basic plan is for a parent who just needs some education and guidance on how to support their child, and that's an hour and a half, and it's tailored specifically to the child's needs. So I'll have a whole PowerPoint presentation with visuals that I show them, and then a written out plan for steps that I want them to follow at home. The comprehensive plan goes more in depth. So I'll have them fill out a 3-day food journal. I will have them send home videos, and I assess these meticulously, and I try to pick up patterns and see, okay, when is the child eating? Where are they eating? What are they eating? And then with the home videos, I'm looking at things like oral motor skills. I'm looking at the mealtime setup. I'm looking at how the child and the parent are interacting. How is the parent addressing things like food refusal? How are they setting up their plate? Just what does the atmosphere look like in general? And then I'm able to extract that and create a more tailored approach. And then I also provide them with 2 weeks of email support. Once that's complete, then they can schedule follow-ups to their own discretion. Of course, I'll give a recommendation depending on their goals. I might say, 4 to 5 sessions would be sufficient enough for you guys to be on the right path. My hourly session rates, so after these, the Feeding Foundations are $150 for an hour, and then for half hour, it's $75. But my goal overall is to educate the parent to the point that they don't need me. And this is usually not what you hear in businesses like this. Usually you want to try to keep the client for as long as you can, right? Because you can get more money out of that. But I just don't align with that approach. I want to give parents the tools that they need to help their child and feel confident enough to support them for the rest of their life. And I'm just here for support when and if they need me.
Right. Awesome. I think, um, you know, that's a great approach to take for any business. I think not enough business take that approach just because the business itself doesn't benefit as much, but
Mm-hmm.
the people you're working with benefit the most. I'm really happy to hear that. Thanks for listening to part 1. Continue for part 2.